Man overboard is an extremely serious and potentially fatal event that every CRV crew could experience at least once in their career. A well-trained skipper and crew have a far greater chance of succeeding at recovering the person alive. The immediate response taken by the crew member witnessing a man overboard or realizing that a crew member is missing, shout "Man overboard." This will alert all crew to the emergency situation. Deploy a Dan buoy, life ring or similar to provide a floating datum. It does not matter if the person is visible at this time or not. The person in the water may see the flotation device and be able to get to it, if not it serves as a reference point for maneuvering the boat back to the man overboard. CRV crew wear life jackets at all times while underway, so the primary function of any equipment thrown in a man overboard situation is not necessarily additional flotation, but as a reference day or night. The equipment thrown should be highly visible, have a light attached, be able to be deployed quickly, be affected as little as possible by the wind. The same equipment would be suitable for use as a floating datum in any subsequent search. The crew member who shouted the alert now points continuously with outstretched arm at the man overboard, if still visible, or Dan buoy, ensuring that visual contact is maintained. This will also indicate the man overboard's location to the skipper. It is imperative that this crew member does this and nothing else until relieved from this duty by the skipper. The secondary actions. In large vessels, a common practice is for the initial turn to be made towards the side which the man overboard fell from, to reduce the chances of the vessel's propellers striking the man overboard. The size of most CRVs means that the crew member on the helm is unlikely to respond quickly enough for this to be relevant. Given a reaction time of 3 seconds from the person falling overboard to the helm being put over, at 6 knots the vessel will have traveled 9 meters. At 12 knots the vessel will have traveled 18 meters. Initiating an immediate turn to avoid propeller strike is not only irrelevant for most CRVs, but a potential hazard, risking injury to other crew or even a second man overboard. There are different methods that can be employed to turn the CRV back towards the man overboard. Regardless of which method is employed, one thing that the crew member on the helm must be able to establish is the reciprocal course. The reciprocal of any course is found by adding or subtracting 180 degrees. For courses less than 180 degrees, add 180 degrees. For courses more than 180 degrees, subtract 180 degrees. For example, course 50 degrees reciprocal is 230 degrees. Course 315 degrees reciprocal is 135 degrees. The design of many marine compasses allows the helmsman to see the course the vessel is on, and the reciprocal at the same time. Another useful aid is a reciprocal table displayed by the helm position. Methods for turning. This module describes 3 commonly used methods that can be used to turn a vessel back towards a man overboard. Williamson turn. Simple turn. Stop, slow and turn. The Williamson turn was developed primarily for large vessels, whose turning circle was such that the man overboard would almost certainly be out of sight by the time the vessel had turned around. The size of the turning circle also meant that merely turning 180 might put the vessel on a reciprocal course, but it would be nowhere near its reciprocal water track. To execute a Williamson turn, the same speed is maintained throughout the maneuver until the vessel is on its reciprocal course. Vessel is first turned until the heading is approximately 60 degrees to 70 degrees from the original course. The helm is then reversed with the same amount of helm applied the opposite way as was used in the initial turn, for example 1 full turn of the wheel to starboard, then back to midships, and 1 full turn of the wheel to port, until the vessel is on the reciprocal of the original course. The vessel turns and initially describes 1/4 of a circle. When the helm is reversed, it then describes 3/4 of an identical sized circle. What needs to be known for this method to be fully effective is at what point on the initial turn is the helm reversed. This can only be established through practice and training. An alternative method is, maintain or reduce speed. Turn the vessel around. Use the still visible floating datum to turn onto the reciprocal water track. While simpler than a Williamson turn, this method depends heavily on the wake hand, or floating datum being visible. Both may be rapidly lost from sight in bad weather, especially at night or in poor visibility. The size of the turning circle will determine at which point the vessel returns to cross its original water track. With a large turning circle there is a small, but potential risk of running over the floating datum or even man overboard if reference to either is lost during the turn. The need to keep a visual reference on the floating datum or wake means that this method needs a relatively small turning circle to be effective. Unlike the previous two methods, the first step is to slow down to a near or full stop, then turn short around. Motor ahead on the reciprocal course. The maneuverability of most CRVs means they can be turned in little more than a boat length. As the vessel will slow down without altering course, the wake will be clearly visible off the stern, lining up the center of the residual wake, and the floating datum means there isn't a need to calculate reciprocal heading. Whatever method is used in a man overboard situation, the helmsman must alert the other crew members prior to any maneuver. Any maneuver should be preceded by a loud and clear warning from the helmsman. For example, turning starboard, followed by a pause of 1 to 2 seconds before initiating the maneuver. This is a practice which should be a standard operating procedure at all times, not just in a man overboard. The MOB function on the CRV's GPS should be activated at the first opportunity. This will provide a backup to the floating datum, and automatically displays bearing and distance to the man overboard waypoint. Sending out a distress call will ensure that assistance will be available if it becomes necessary. It can always be cancelled should the situation be resolved. Whether the distress call is sent immediately or at a later stage is at the discretion of the skipper. The average CRV carries 4 crew as its normal complement, and in the event of a man overboard there will be 2 crew needed to help in the recovery of the man overboard, and 1 on the helm. While turning around, sighting the man overboard, then preparing to approach and recover, sending a distress call may be an unwarranted distraction. In the event of an unwitnessed man overboard, or where the CRV fails to locate the man overboard, a then distress call must be made. If the man overboard is lost from sight, a structured search must be initiated. Being unable to locate a fellow crew member will be highly stressful for all aboard. For the search to be successful, correct procedures must be followed. Having sighted the man overboard and assessed the situation, the skipper or crew in charge, skippers are not immune to falling overboard, will allocate positions to the crew and brief them on appropriate recovery actions. The following points must be considered after rescuing the man overboard: cancel any distress call. Continue to monitor the patient's condition, ABCs, and treat for shock as required. Complete the necessary unit and maritime and Z forms as required for a man overboard incident.